Welcome to Dreamy Nights. Unwind and drift away with soothing night stories crafted to calm your mind and lead you into a peaceful sleep. Each story here is a gentle escape where dreams come alive and your worries melt away like stars in the night sky. Relax, close your eyes, and let us guide you into a world of tranquility. In the small, sleepy town of Pine Hollow, nestled at the foot of snow-covered mountains, there lived a widower named Thomas. The death of his wife, Emily, 2 years ago had cast a shadow over his life. Their home, once filled with the warmth of shared laughter and love, now felt cold and empty. Christmas, which had always been their most cherished holiday, only reminded Thomas of what he had lost. Year after year, he would decorate the house alone, cook a solitary dinner, and sit by the fireplace, staring at the empty chair across from him where Emily once sat. This Christmas, however, felt different. There was a strange heaviness in the air, like something was about to change, though he couldn't put his finger on it. It was a bitterly cold evening, just after the first snowflakes began to fall. Thomas had just returned home from his daily walk to the town square when he noticed something odd, a letter sitting on his doorstep. The envelope was plain, but sealed with a crimson wax stamp. There was no return address, just his name, written in a neat, flowing script. Curious, Thomas bent down and picked it up, his fingers trembling slightly as he broke the seal. The paper inside was thick, elegant, and scented faintly of pine and cinnamon. He read aloud, the words echoing in the quiet of his porch. Dear Thomas, I know you've forgotten what Christmas once meant. I understand the ache that lingers in your heart. But this Christmas, there are 12 things I want you to find, one for each day leading to Christmas Eve. These will help you remember what it means to truly live, to laugh, to love. Begin with the first, a friend. For a moment, Thomas sat in stunned silence, staring at the letter in his hands. He felt a strange mix of emotions, confusion, skepticism, and a flicker of hope. Who could this be from? And what did it mean to find something in the days leading to Christmas? Still unsure but intrigued, Thomas placed the letter on his kitchen table. Perhaps it was just a prank, a random act of kindness, or maybe even a letter from an old friend he had forgotten. The next morning, before the sun had even risen, the second letter appeared, this time tucked neatly under his door. It read, Today, look out the window at sunrise. Find the joy in a simple thing. If you're still unsure, take a walk and let the cold air remind you that you are alive. There is beauty in even the smallest moments. A friend. Thomas rose from his bed, still groggy and unsure of what he was doing, but something about the letter's words tugged it at him. He stepped to the window, his breath fogging up the glass as he gazed out at the world blanketed in white snow. The sun had just begun to rise over the mountains, casting long, golden beams across the landscape. The world seemed to shimmer in the light, and for a moment, Thomas felt a tiny stir of warmth in his chest. Maybe this was what the letter meant, finding beauty in the world around him. He decided to take a walk. The crisp winter air stung his cheeks, and his boots crunched in the fresh snow. With each step, the heaviness in his heart seemed to lift, just a little. It was a fleeting feeling, but it was there, like a spark igniting a long dormant flame. The third letter arrived later that evening. It was waiting for him on his doorstep when he returned from his walk. This one was longer, and it read, "Today, call someone you haven't spoken to in years. Reconnect. It may be uncomfortable at first, but you'll find that the bridge between you is shorter than you think. A friend." Thomas paused as he read the letter, the message sinking in. Who had he not spoken to in years? His sister, Martha, came to mind. They hadn't spoken much since Emily's death. Their relationship had become strained, with both of them grieving in their own ways. Perhaps now was the time to reach out, to make amends for the lost years. After some hesitation, Thomas picked up the phone and dialed her number. When the line picked up, there was a long pause before Martha's voice came through, hesitant but warm. "Hello, Thomas. Is everything okay?" Yeah, everything's fine," Thomas stammered, feeling nervous. "I've just been thinking. It's been a while since we've talked. I thought maybe we could get together for Christmas this year." There was a long silence on the other end of the line before Martha responded. "I'd like that, Thomas. I really would." The fourth letter arrived the next day, and it was even more surprising than the last. It read, "Today, do something you used to love but haven't done in years. Rediscover the joy in it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just let yourself enjoy the moment." A friend. Thomas thought about this for a while. What had he loved to do that he had abandoned? And then it came to him Emily had always loved to bake during the holidays. They used to make gingerbread cookies together, decorating them with icing and sprinkles, laughing as the kitchen filled with the scent of warm sugar and spice. That afternoon, Thomas pulled out the old recipe book from the shelf, its pages worn and stained. He gathered the ingredients and, despite the sadness that crept over him as he thought of Emily, he began mixing the dough. Slowly but surely, the process of baking became comforting. The scent of ginger and cinnamon filled the house, and for the first time in years, Thomas felt a little bit of joy. By the fifth day, Martha had arrived. The house felt brighter with her presence, and they spent the evening together, decorating the tree. Martha helped Thomas hang the ornaments that had once been a family tradition, each one reminding him of simpler times. They laughed and chatted, and even though the grief still lingered, it wasn't as heavy as before. "It's nice to have you here," Martha Thomas said, as they placed the star on top of the tree. "I missed this," she replied softly, her eyes filled with emotion. The sixth letter arrived, asking Thomas to give something without expecting anything in return. It encouraged him to go out into the world and spread kindness. The message felt more personal now. It was as if the letter knew his heart, knew exactly what he needed to heal. And so, Thomas spent the day helping others. He shoveled snow for his elderly neighbor, baked cookies for the local shelter, and even helped a young mother carry her groceries. With each act of kindness, his heart felt lighter, as if he were reclaiming a part of himself he had forgotten. As the days passed, the letters continued, each one guiding him toward healing. The eighth letter asked him to open his heart to new experiences, The ninth urged him to take a moment of silence, to reflect on everything he had learned so far. Each letter felt like a step forward on his journey, and by the 12th day, he had already changed in ways he couldn't fully explain. The 12th letter, however, was different. It had no instructions, only a single question. What is it you need to make this Christmas complete? Thomas sat by the fire, holding the letter in his hands, pondering the question. He had come so far, rediscovering the joys of life, of love, of Christmas itself. But what did he need now? The answer was clear. He needed to forgive himself. He needed to let go of the guilt, to embrace the life that still awaited him. And maybe, just maybe, he needed to invite new love into his life. Not in the way he had once known, but in a way that would honor Emily's memory and allow him to live fully again. As Christmas Eve approached, Martha, who had stayed for the holiday, sat beside him by the fire. They exchanged a knowing smile. The doorbell rang, and Thomas went to answer it. But when he opened the door, there was no one there, only a final gift, wrapped in simple brown paper. Was it another letter? Or something more? Thomas picked up the small, neatly wrapped package from his doorstep. The night was silent, the only sound being the soft whisper of the falling snow. He glanced around, but there was no one in sight. No footsteps leading away, no indication of who had left the gift. Yet, the package felt somehow significant, as if it were the final piece of a puzzle he had been piecing together for days. He brought it inside and placed it carefully on the kitchen table. The wrapping was simple, brown paper with a delicate red ribbon tied around it. There was no tag, no label, only a faint scent of pine that reminded him of the woods near his house. He unwrapped it slowly, savoring the moment, unsure of what he would find inside. As the paper fell away, Thomas saw a small, ornate wooden box. It was exquisitely carved, with intricate patterns that seemed to dance across the surface. The wood felt smooth and warm beneath his fingertips, as though it had been carefully crafted by hands that knew the value of time and care. At the center of the box was a brass latch, which he opened with a soft click. Inside, there was a single, folded note, written in the same elegant handwriting as the letters he had been receiving all month. It read, "Now, you have found all 12. You have reawakened the light that had gone out, and you have opened your heart again. But there is one final step for you to take. Embrace the love you've rediscovered and share it freely. Christmas isn't just about remembering what you've lost, but also about discovering what you still have. A friend." A soft sigh escaped Thomas's lips as he closed his eyes, the words settling deep within him. It was as though the note was speaking directly to him, not just about Christmas, but about the entire journey he had been on since that first letter arrived. He had been searching for a way to heal, to reconnect with the world, with his past, and with his own heart. Now, the final piece of the puzzle was clear. Thomas looked at the box one last time, then carefully placed it back on the table. For the first time in a long while, he felt truly ready to embrace what Christmas was truly about, not just the traditions or the decorations, but the connections we share, the people we love, and the new memories we create even after loss. As he sat back in his chair, Thomas glanced over at the fire flickering in the hearth. Martha, who had been quietly reading by the window, looked up and smiled when she saw him staring at her. "You okay, Thomas?" she asked gently. He nodded, a soft smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Yeah," he said, his voice steady. "I think I'm okay." Martha stood up and walked over to him, sitting beside him by the fire. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her presence warm and familiar. "It's good to see you like this," she said. "You've come a long way." Thomas nodded again, the weight of everything lifting from his shoulders. He knew it wasn't just the letters or the gifts that had brought him to this place. It was the courage to take each step, no matter how small, toward healing. And then, just as they sat there, the doorbell rang once more. Thomas stood, walking slowly to the door. He had learned that sometimes life gives you surprises when you least expect them. When he opened it, a gust of cold air rushed in, and there, standing in the snowy night, was a familiar face. It was Eleanor, the woman from the cafe in town, a friend he had known years ago but had lost touch with over time. She was holding a basket full of freshly baked bread and a bottle of homemade cider. Her eyes sparkled with kindness as she smiled warmly at him. "I was hoping to catch you before it got too late," she said, her voice soft and cheerful. "Merry Christmas, Thomas. I made you some bread. Thought you might like it." For a moment, Thomas stood in the doorway, taken aback. Eleanor had been a part of his life many years ago, and though they hadn't spoken in months, here she was, standing on his doorstep, bringing with her warmth and kindness. It felt like a sign, a reminder that life had more to offer, more to give than he had thought. He smiled, feeling the old familiar spark of connection. "Thank you, Eleanor. This is exactly what I needed." She stepped inside, and they stood in the warmth of the house, the scent of fresh bread filling the air. Martha had risen to greet her, and soon they were sitting around the kitchen table, talking about old times, laughing about the silly things they used to do, and sharing stories of the years that had passed. For the first time in what felt like forever, Thomas felt whole again, not because everything was perfect, but because he had taken the steps to open his heart to the people who mattered most. He realized that the love he had rediscovered was not just a memory of Emily. It was a love for life itself, for the people who remained, and for the possibility of new beginnings. As they sat together, the warmth of the fire crackling in the background, Thomas couldn't help but think about the letters. They had been a gift, a challenge, and a guide. Each one had helped him see the world in a new way, leading him to this moment, surrounded by the people who cared about him. He could feel Emily's presence in the room, not as a loss, but as a love that had shaped him, a love that would always be a part of him. And as the night wore on, Thomas realized something important. Christmas wasn't just about the past or the future. It was about the here and now. It was about the people who stood beside you, the love you shared, and the moments that made life worth living. The doorbell rang again as the night grew late, but this time, Thomas didn't need to answer it. He already knew what the greatest gift was. It was the people in his life, the ones who had always been there and the ones he had yet to meet. The gift of connection, of love, was all around him. And that, he realized, was the true meaning of Christmas. And so, as the snow continued to fall outside, Thomas sat back in his chair, content, surrounded by warmth, love, and the spirit of Christmas that had finally found its way back into his heart. The snow outside Pine Hollow grew heavier, blanketing the town in a soft, shimmering white as the fire crackled warmly in Thomas's home. The kitchen table was now filled with remnants of Eleanor's bread and cider, along with mugs of hot cocoa Martha had brewed. Laughter flowed easily among the trio, and for the first time in years, Thomas felt his house alive with the sounds of Christmas. Yet there was still something lingering in his mind. The letters, who had sent them? What had inspired this mysterious friend to guide him back to life? Every clue, every note, had felt so personal, as though someone had been watching him closely, knowing his thoughts, his struggles. And now, with Christmas Day just hours away, he couldn't shake the feeling that the answer was close. As the night grew late, Eleanor stood to leave, pulling her coat tightly around her shoulders. "I'm glad I stopped by," she said, her cheeks rosy from the warmth of the fire. "I'd been thinking about you lately, Thomas. Something told me I needed to come. I didn't know why, but now I do." Thomas walked her to the door, his heart feeling fuller than it had in years. "I'm glad you did too," he said, his voice steady but soft. "Merry Christmas, Eleanor." She gave him a warm smile, one that lingered even after she disappeared into the snowy night. Thomas watched her until she was out of sight, then closed the door gently behind him. Martha was already tidying up, humming an old Christmas carol under her breath. "She's a good one, you know," she said, glancing at her brother with a knowing smile. Thomas chuckled. "I've noticed." As they finished cleaning up, the clock struck midnight. Christmas Day had officially arrived. Martha retired to the guest room, leaving Thomas alone in the living room. He stood by the tree, its lights twinkling softly in the darkened room, and let out a deep sigh. His heart was lighter now. His soul no longer weighed down by grief. But the question of the letters still gnawed at him. He turned to the ornate wooden box that had arrived earlier that evening, still sitting on the table. Something about it felt incomplete, as though it held more than he had yet uncovered. He opened it again, lifting the note he had already read. Beneath it, hidden in a false bottom, he found another piece of paper. This one was different, longer, with a message that made his breath catch. "Dear Thomas, Tear, if you found this final letter, it means you've completed the journey I set out for you. And for that, I am so proud. You may be wondering who I am, why I sent these letters, and how I seem to know exactly what you needed. The truth is, I am not someone far away, not a stranger or a distant friend. I am someone who has loved you for a very long time, even if you didn't know it. I'm Emily, your Emily. When I left this world, I knew how much my absence would hurt you. I knew you would bury yourself in grief and forget how to live. And so before my time came, I planned this for you. I wrote these letters, not knowing when or how they would find you, but trusting that they would reach you when you were ready. I wanted you to remember the joy we shared, but more than that, I wanted you to find a new joy, one that would carry you forward. I wanted you to reconnect with the world, to embrace the love that still surrounds you, and to let yourself be happy again. I know this must seem impossible, but I hope you can feel my love in every word, in every step you've taken. I may not be with you in the way I once was, but I am always here, in the memories we shared, in the love that still fills your heart. You are stronger than you know, Thomas. And now, I hope you can continue to live, to laugh, and to love for yourself and for me. Merry Christmas, my love. Forever yours, Emily. Thomas's hands trembled as he set the letter down. Tears blurred his vision, but his heart swelled with an indescribable warmth. Emily. It had been her all along. Somehow, she had reached across time and loss to guide him back to the light, to remind him of the love that would always be a part of him. He sank into the chair by the fire, clutching the letter tightly to his chest. For the first time since she had passed, he didn't feel the ache of her absence as sharply. Instead, he felt her presence, her love, surrounding him like a gentle embrace. The night stretched on, and Thomas sat there, lost in thought and gratitude. He thought of the journey the letters had taken him on, the steps he had taken to heal, the people who had come back into his life. And he thought of Emily, not as someone he had lost, but as someone who had given him the greatest gift of all, the courage to live again. As dawn broke over Pine Hollow, the world bathed in the golden light of Christmas morning, Thomas finally rose. He placed the letter back in the wooden box and set it on the mantel, where it would stay as a reminder of the love that had carried him through. Then he went to wake Martha, eager to share breakfast and the warmth of the day. Later, as they opened presents under the tree, Thomas couldn't help but smile. For the first time in years, he was truly present, truly alive. And in his heart, he knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with hope, love, and the endless possibilities of a life well lived. And so, the story of Thomas and the 12 letters of Christmas didn't truly end. Instead, it became a new beginning, one that would carry him forward into the days, months, and years to come, with the spirit of Christmas and Emily forever in his heart. The snow outside Pine Hollow blanketed the town as Thomas sat by the fire, rereading the final letter from the mysterious sender. The ornate wooden box left on his doorstep had contained the truth he hadn't dared to imagine the letters were from Emily. Somehow, before her passing, she had written them, knowing he would need her words to guide him back to life when his grief became too much to bear. Her final message read, "You are stronger than you know, Thomas. I may not be with you as I once was, but I will always be in your heart. Live, love, and let joy back into your life, for me and for you. Merry Christmas, my love." Tears welled in his eyes, but they were not of despair. Instead, they carried a sense of peace and gratitude. Emily's love had reached across time and loss, reminding him that he wasn't alone and that life could still hold joy. For the first time in years, he felt her presence, not as a painful absence, but as a comforting warmth. Placing the letter back in the box, he set it on the mantel, where it would stay as a reminder of her love and the journey he had taken. The quiet quiet house now felt alive with possibility, and the spark of Christmas lit within him once more. When morning came, the golden light of Christmas filtered through the windows. Thomas woke early and greeted Martha, who smiled at the sight of her brother's renewed energy. They shared breakfast, laughing about childhood memories, and exchanged gifts beneath the tree. Thomas gave her a hand-carved ornament he'd made a new hobby he'd taken up after the 11th letter had encouraged him to find a creative outlet. She hugged him tightly, her joy palpable. Later in the day, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was Eleanor, holding another basket of fresh bread and cider. She was nervous but hopeful, and Thomas greeted her with a warm smile that spoke volumes. Together with Martha, they spent the afternoon talking, sharing stories, and building a sense of connection that Thomas realized he had deeply missed. As the day turned to evening, Thomas sat by the fire, the echoes of laughter still filling the house. He gazed at the wooden box, its intricate carvings glowing in the firelight. Emily had given him the courage to take each step, and now it was up to him to keep walking. Life stretched ahead, not as an uncertain void, but as a canvas ready to be filled with new memories. The snow outside continued to fall, but within Thomas's heart, the season's true warmth burned brightly. Christmas wasn't just about what had been lost, it was about what remained and what could still be found. And so, the story didn't end. It became a beginning, a life renewed, a heart reopened, and a love that would never fade, guiding him toward the endless possibilities of tomorrow.